Maya always liked the quiet just before sunset. The sky would turn from gold to a soft lavender, and for a few moments, the world seemed to hold its breath. That evening was no different. She was rolling her wheelchair carefully down the ramp outside the small convenience store at the corner of Pine and Maple, her grocery bag balanced on her lap. The hum of the city around her was soothing. Cars passing, someone laughing nearby, a dog barking in the distance. She was used to doing things on her own. Her father always insisted on teaching her independence, even though he never let her go anywhere without making sure she had her phone and a safety plan. She'd just bought some apples, a carton of milk, and her favorite snack, peanut butter cups. Nothing special. She was thinking about her homework, maybe watching a show later, when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. At first, she didn't think much of it. People walked past all the time. But there was something different about the rhythm, rushed, uneven, like someone striding with purpose. When she turned her head slightly, she saw him. A man, maybe in his 40s, with a red baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and a jaw tight with anger. His expression made her stomach twist before he even spoke. "Hey, you," he barked, his voice sharp and hostile. Maya blinked, unsure he was talking to her. "Me?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, you," he snapped, taking a step closer. "You think you can just sit there, begging for sympathy, huh?" Her heart skipped. I'm not begging," she said, her voice trembling. "I was just." "Don't lie," he cut in, his words dripping venom. "I saw you looking at me like I owe you something." She hadn't even looked at him until now. People were starting to notice. A young couple paused at the corner, a man with a coffee cup turned to watch. But no one stepped forward. That was the part that always stung the most. Not the words, but the silence that surrounded them. "I didn't mean anything," Maya said softly. "Please, I'm just going home." But the man wasn't listening. His anger wasn't really about her, she could tell. It was like he needed somewhere to put his hate, and she just happened to be there. A young black girl in a wheelchair, an easy target for a coward looking to feel powerful. He took another step forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. "People like you," he said, his lip curling, "always think you can play the victim. Sitting there with your handouts, pretending the world's unfair. You think I don't have problems." Maya's pulse raced. She wanted to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The curb was behind her, and the ramp was too steep to turn around quickly. Her hands tightened on the metal rims of her wheels. "Please," she whispered again. The man's face twisted into something even uglier. "Don't tell me what to do," he snarled. Then, in one sharp motion, he snatched the grocery bag from her lap and threw it down. The apples rolled across the sidewalk, one of them hitting the tire of her chair and bouncing away. Milk spilled from the carton, spreading like a white puddle at her feet. The peanut butter cups lay torn open, melting slowly in the evening heat. Someone gasped nearby, but still, no one moved. Maya's throat felt tight. She wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come out. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, calm and steady, like it always was when he trained her to stay composed. "Never let their hate decide who you are, baby. You stay strong. You stay smart." The man loomed over her, his breath hot and sour. "Bet your daddy taught you to act all innocent, huh? Probably taught you how to make people feel sorry for you." She flinched. "My father taught me to stand up for myself," she said quietly, almost too softly to hear. He laughed. A cruel, humorless sound. "Yeah, you don't look like you can stand up for anything." Her eyes burned, but she held them steady on his. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. The fear inside her shifted, turning into something colder, heavier, not anger, but exhaustion. She'd dealt with people like this before, people who thought her disability made her weak, who thought her skin made her less. But this man's hate had a ferocity that felt dangerous. A breeze blew through, carrying the faint sound of traffic and a car door closing somewhere nearby. She glanced past him, hoping, praying, that someone would step in. But he didn't notice her looking. His focus was entirely on her, his rage boiling over into something close to madness. He leaned closer, his shadow falling across her. "You people don't belong here," he said under his breath. "You think you can take over, make everyone feel guilty." That was when Maya heard another sound. A low, measured voice calling her name from across the parking lot. Her father. She didn't turn her head, but relief washed over her in a wave so powerful it made her hands tremble. The man hadn't noticed yet. But he would. And in that moment, as her father's footsteps approached, Maya's fear began to fade, replaced by the quiet certainty that justice was only a few steps away. The man didn't even notice when the low, steady voice cut through his rant. That's enough. It wasn't loud, but it carried, sharp as a command, and the sound made Maya's heart leap with recognition. Her father's voice always had that weight, the kind that stopped people mid-motion, the kind that could silence a room. The man froze for a second, then turned around. Standing a few yards away was a tall figure in a dark jacket and jeans, hands relaxed at his sides, but his presence filled the space between them. His expression was unreadable, calm, controlled, but his eyes were sharp and cold as stone. Maya had never seen her father angry the way other people got angry. He didn't yell, he didn't flare up. His fury was quieter, heavier, like a storm that gathered behind the clouds before the first crack of thunder. "Who the hell are you?" the man snapped, trying to sound defiant but already losing the edge in his voice. Her father stepped closer, his movements slow, deliberate. "I'm the man you need to stop talking to that way," he said evenly. Then, his tone softened just slightly as he looked toward Maya. "You okay, baby girl?" Maya nodded, her throat too tight for words. She wanted to tell him she was fine, that she'd handled worse, but the trembling in her hands betrayed her. The man scoffed. "Oh, great, another one of you people playing the hero," he said, his bravado rising again, though his eyes flickered uncertainly between the badge now visible on the man's belt and the cold authority in his voice. Her father didn't react, he simply took another step forward, now close enough that the man had to tilt his head slightly to look him in the eye. "You think it's all right to yell at a young girl in a wheelchair?" he asked quietly. "To throw her things, intimidate her, call her names. She was being disrespectful," the man stammered. "Giving me looks, thinking she's better than everyone." "That's not what I saw," her father interrupted, still calm, still measured. "What I saw was a grown man harassing someone who did nothing to him." For a moment, the man seemed to falter. His hands twitched at his sides, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. The other bystanders, who had been silent until now, began to shift uneasily. A woman nearby pulled out her phone. A teenager whispered something to his friend, both of them watching with wide eyes. "You a cop or something?" the man finally muttered, his tone halfway between defiance and fear. Her father didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out his badge, letting the metal glint in the fading sunlight. "Detective Carter," he said. "And you're about 2 minutes away from being in a lot of trouble." The man's face went pale. He took a step back, his hands going up instinctively. "Hey, I didn't know, I wasn't. Didn't know she was my daughter," Carter asked, his voice still even but sharper now. "Would that have made it okay if she wasn't?" The question hung in the air, heavy and cutting. The man swallowed hard, his gaze darting toward the watching crowd. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it, all right. I just lost my temper." "That's not losing your temper," Carter said quietly. "That's showing exactly who you are." He turned slightly, just enough to glance at Maya, who was watching him with wide, tearful eyes. "Call dispatch," he said softly. "Tell them we've got a disturbance, possible assault." Her father's calm professionalism was like armor. Maya could see how the man's confidence crumbled with every passing second. He shifted from arrogance to panic, stammering excuses, glancing at the exits as though considering running. But Carter didn't move an inch. He stood there, solid as a wall, his tone steady as he began to read the man his rights. When the sirens finally echoed faintly in the distance, the man started to plead. "Come on, man, she's fine. You don't need to do this. I said I was sorry." Carter looked at him, unblinking. "You're sorry because you got caught," he said. "Not because you hurt someone." The patrol cars arrived faster than Maya expected, lights flashing against the shop windows, painting the whole street in blue and red. 2 officers stepped out, recognizing Carter immediately. They exchanged brief words, then moved to take the man into custody. He didn't resist. The fight had gone out of him completely. As the cuffs clicked shut, he glanced back at Maya, but she didn't look away. She wanted him to see her, not as a victim, but as someone who had survived his hate and would keep surviving long after he was gone. When it was over, Carter knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You did good," he said softly. "You stayed calm." She tried to smile, though her voice still shook. "You always told me to." He nodded. "And you listened." He stood up, brushing the dust from his jeans, then looked toward the officers loading the man into the car. "People like that think they can scare others because no one stops them," he said. "But tonight, someone did." Maya exhaled slowly, watching as the flashing lights faded down the street. For the first time that night, she felt her heartbeat slow, her breath steady. The air smelled like rain was coming, clean and cold. Her father squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back, the silent promise between them as steady as the badge on his belt. The street was finally quiet again. The flashing lights had faded into the distance, leaving behind only the faint hum of the city and the rustle of evening wind. Maya sat still in her wheelchair, her heart beginning to slow its relentless pounding. The air felt different now, lighter, though a chill lingered from everything that had just happened. The puddle of spilled milk near her feet had dried into a pale smear on the concrete, and her groceries were a scattered mess. Yet none of that mattered anymore. The danger was gone. Detective Carter stood nearby, his posture no longer as rigid, though his eyes still carried that cautious alertness that came from years on the job. He watched the patrol cars turn the corner before letting out a quiet breath. When he turned back to Maya, his expression softened. The professional mask melted away, and he was just her dad again. "You all right, sweetheart?" he asked gently. His voice carried the faintest tremor, one he probably didn't even notice, the sound of a man who had held his fear in check until it was safe to let it out. Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so." Carter crouched down beside her, picking up the bruised apples that had rolled beneath the ramp. He dusted them off with his handkerchief and placed them carefully back in the torn grocery bag, one by one, like a ritual of reclaiming something simple and normal. "I should have come in with you," he murmured. "I just thought that I could handle it," Maya finished softly. "And I could have, Dad. I just didn't see it coming." He met her eyes, a shadow of pride and guilt crossing his face. "You shouldn't have to handle things like that at all," he said. "Not you. Not anyone." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The streetlight above them flickered on, casting a soft golden glow. A breeze moved through the trees, scattering a few dry leaves across the sidewalk. Maya could feel the ache in her chest easing, replaced by something steadier, not relief exactly, but understanding. This wasn't the first time she had faced cruelty, but it was the first time it had turned violent. And it was the first time she had seen what her father's quiet authority could do outside their home, not just as her dad, but as someone who stood for justice every day. The store clerk stepped out hesitantly, wiping his hands on his apron. "Is she okay?" he asked. "I called the cops too, but guess they got here faster than I thought." "She's fine," Carter said, his tone polite but firm. "Thank you for keeping an eye out." The man nodded quickly and went back inside, leaving them alone again. Maya watched her father for a long moment. The way he moved, calm, deliberate, never wasting emotion, had always reminded her of the stories he told about his early years on the force. Back then, she used to think his badge made him invincible. Now she understood it wasn't the badge. It was him, the way he believed in what it stood for, even when the world made it hard to. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said after a moment, standing and brushing off his knees. She shook her head. "Don't be. I'm glad you were here." He gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I always will be." A few moments passed in silence. He gathered the rest of her things, salvaging what he could. The peanut butter cups were ruined, the milk gone, but she didn't mind. When he finished, he reached for the handles of her chair. "Let's get you home, kiddo." As he started pushing her toward the car, Maya turned her head slightly. "Dad, yeah, you didn't get angry. Not really. You just stopped him." "How do you do that?" He chuckled softly. "Anger's easy," he said. "It's control that takes strength. I learned a long time ago that if you want to stand up to hate, you can't let it pull you down to its level." You've got to rise above it, with truth, with calm, with law. He paused. And maybe a little bit of love. She smiled faintly, the tension in her chest unraveling. You always make it sound so simple. It's not, he admitted. But it's what keeps us human. They reached the car, and he helped her transfer from the chair to the seat, folding the wheelchair with practiced ease. Before getting in, he looked back at the spot where it had all happened. The broken groceries, the faint blue reflection from the earlier police lights still shimmering on the glass door. There was a heaviness in his gaze, but also resolution. He had seen too many scenes like that in his career, the aftermath of someone's hate, someone's fear, and he knew how deep the damage could go. But tonight, he also saw something else. His daughter, strong and unbroken. As he got into the driver's seat and started the car, Maya leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past. The fear was still there, but it was fading, replaced by something warmer. Gratitude, safety, the quiet, unshakable certainty that her father would always show up when she needed him most. When they stopped at a red light, he glanced over at her. You know, he said, half smiling, next time you want peanut butter cups, I'm coming in with you. Maya laughed, the sound soft but real. Deal. The light turned green, and they drove on into the night, father and daughter, side by side, leaving behind the echoes of hate and carrying with them the strength that love and courage always leave behind.